Hey, folks, thanks for joining us today. You know, what I find really interesting is there's so many times that there are people out there who have experienced something in their lives that has helped them to create an entirely different and new life for themselves. And then in return, they are helping others. And I have such a person on the show today. Her name is Felicia Searcy, and she is a four-time award-winning transformational coach, international speaker, and author, and a minister. And she's worked with people from all walks of life who are seeking to discover that secret component that can help them to change their lives and to create a life that they truly desire. So I hope you'll join us. I think you'll find it fascinating with the concepts that she shares with us.
At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Felicia, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm great, Dr. Doug. It is fabulous to be here with you today.
Oh, I'm really excited about talking about this because, you know, it's fascinating. There's so many different approaches to helping people to really create a new life for themselves. And I think that being able to discover different choices, because I don't think that one size fits all. And yet being able to find people who have found very great success in helping people to do that as well as themselves. Oftentimes we find that, you know, that's going to ring true for somebody. So I'm really excited to talk about this bit. So tell the folks a little bit about your background and how on earth did you get to this point of helping people?
Yeah. So, like many people that are listening, I grew up in a very dark environment. Both my parents did the best they could, and they struggled with addiction and mental illness. Now, the reason I bring that up is because what that does, at least what it did for me and many people that I've had the honor of working with over the years, is that it imprints a particular way of relating to the world. And for me, it was a way, it imprinted a sense that the world was not safe, that I did not have a right to ask for what I wanted or even have what I wanted, and to stay very, under the radar and not ask for too much, not to expect too much, and to be super tuned in to the needs of other people, to the point where I really began to feel invisible and erased. And it was in my early 20s that I really hit a place where I was seriously considering whether or not to even continue to stay on this side of things, that it was just such an overwhelming feeling of desperation, of unworthiness, of undeserving. And, I love cliches because they're a cliche for a reason, right? Because they describe what's going on. And that, the cliche of it's always darkest before the dawn. I was in that spot where there was an opening, there was a receptivity to something different. And this is when I discovered and began a very deep spiritual path, a deep spiritual process, understanding that, number one, there is a power for good at work in my life and work in all of our lives. And there are immutable laws that govern our results. And the more we can come to understand these universal laws that are always at work and work with them in a way, in a partnership kind of way, and unlock that which is coming most alive in us, we're actually serving this energy as we serve our dream. We bring our highest contribution and our lives transformed. And that's what happened for me, that there's nothing in my history to suggest that I would be where I am, doing what I am today, living the kind of life that I am. And what I love about it is that it's a system. It's not because I was specially chosen or I was plucked out or it was lucky. I don't know that stumble upon is the right word, but I came upon a spiritual success system and codified it in words that work for me, applied it in my life. And I got to have a telescope to see where I am today. And this is what I have the amazing honor of now being able to share it with others, because it's available for all of us.
Well, and I think what's really interesting is that so many people find themselves caught up in a certain experience in their lives, and they don't think they can change it. And then when they hear this concept of, you can create a new life for yourselves, that becomes very foreign to them and difficult to understand. And it's like, what do you mean? And yet there are so many people who have gone through different programs and different processes that have literally learned how to create a different life. And I think part of that is this concept of perception, this concept of reality, and recognizing, as you know, that our reality is based on our beliefs.
Yeah.
And, everything that we observe is there. I belong to a networking group that I just joined in an effort to help them grow a little bit. And it's interesting because as I'm listening to them, I'm saying, okay, so why aren't you growing as much as you want to? And one of them says, well, we live too far. So I was talking to someone else and they said, well, yeah, it's kind of too far away from everybody because we're up in the mountains here. And it's like, that's why you're not growing, because you have that perception. And as you speak that perception, that creates the reality. And it's time to get rid of that. So explain to the audience a little bit, based on your understanding, how does our belief system and those things that have been imprinted on us as children, as you just explained for yourself, or just in general, even society and all of those imprints and suggestions and how we need to be and should and ought to and all those type of things, can create a reality for ourselves that in fact is not a reality?
Yeah, such a great question. It's the foundation, right? It's the foundation to everything. And so when we look at the process of creation, right? So first, we have to start with the foundation of understanding how this all works. Step back. Many people talk about mindset, that it's all about mindset. And I really encourage people to go deeper, because every single one of us has been given this indescribable gift of our imagination, that we have been given the ability to consciously run movies across, what Joseph Murphy calls the movie screen of our mind, and not even consciously. It's happening all the time anyway. And we are the only species on the planet that we are aware of that has the ability to consciously choose those images. Now, the reason why this is important is because whatever we're running in our imagination across the movie screen of our mind then determines how we feel, and this then creates our belief, and if you go even deeper, it creates our identity. And the reason why this is important is because we will never outperform our identity. We will never outperform the way we see ourselves. Now, from an energetic perspective, what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling habitually, not the surface, but habitually, as it defines who I am and how I move in the world, that literally transmits an energetic signal that now is being transmitted and impressed into an invisible field. Quantum physics is proving what spiritual masters have taught throughout the ages, that we're literally impressing a wave, an energetic impression into this field. And where waves of energy are hanging out in superposition, and it becomes the organizing pattern for our results. Now, when we think about what we believe, and here's the things that most people just fundamentally, regardless of what you believe about yourself, most people in our world, and at least I know this was the case for me, have been trained to believe more in the information that the five senses are giving us than we do in the power of our imagination. That we will have an idea, like this idea of this networking group, right? And then you start gathering evidence with your five senses to determine whether or not it's going to work. The point that people miss is that the image itself is the power. And when you allow yourself to be informed and guided and trust the image as the organizing principle for yourself, for your identity, and for this energy, you know that this has far more power than what is happening out here. In fact, I would even go as far as to say that this is the most potent energy in the world. Now, it's one thing to have that piece of information, right?
I'm going to interrupt you for a minute because we're not only on video, but we're also on audio. And when you say this, I see what you're
Oh,
pointing to, but
pointing to
nobody
my
else
head.
does. So go
Okay.
ahead with the audience. What are you pointing to when you say this?
So I'm pointing to my head, I'm pointing to my mind, I'm pointing to my imagination, right?
Good, good. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for that. And so it's so when people they start giving reasons why something won't work, it for me it's an indicator that people don't understand. They don't understand the system for creating results. They don't understand the power that we wield at our fingertips. And then here's the difference between what I'm sharing and mindset. People don't understand that the imagination and the ability to generate a energetic field through our feelings is a gift. It is a divine gift. And the dream for something more expansive is actually not your dream. We're receiving that from this universal intelligence, from this infinite intelligence, because it is the way that life is seeking to wake us up to more of who we are created to be. And so the purpose of the dream is not necessarily to achieve, although that's great. The real purpose is to knock at the door of our heart and say, oh my gosh, you're capable of so much more. Who you are today is brilliant. And guess what? There's even more brilliance that's within you. And the dream is the informer and the catalyst to bring that into, to bring you more into our world. And then your life changes.
Well, and you know, it's interesting. I come from a deeply religious background. Okay. And as I've gone through my life and observed what's going on, I recognize so many times that people are saying, okay, God, I need you to do this for me. I need you to help me to change this. I need this. I need this. And if they want change, they're praying for it. They're praying for it. They're praying for it. And what's interesting is that in my experience, in my mind, they're losing the understanding that they have the personal ability and responsibility to change. And
that's it.
And then, yeah, then those blessings come, and not to take away the fact that those are blessings for those that have that religious background. But the reality is that to depend on someone else to do everything for you is really deeply a challenge when you realize suddenly that, you know what, this is something that I can change myself. And can I get some help? Sure. You know, help me to make these changes, but take the personal responsibility to realize that you are the one that can make those changes. And if you're not willing to do that, I don't care how much prayer you're going to do, it's not necessarily going to happen.
Yeah, and Dr. Doug, the thing that I've discovered over the years that I've been doing this, because my background, I am a minister and that taught universal law, and now I apologize for my dog. I tried to
That's
block
fine.
as much as I can. Must be the Amazon guy. You know, that so what I've seen over the years with people is that people want something, and then they're really afraid to truly want it. And so, yes, there's a level of personal responsibility. And I think it's more of a level of personal dominion. It's a recognition that we really have been given this power, and that we really do have the capability to create something different for ourselves. And then here's the sticking point that I find for so many people, and this is the thing that I really had to go after, was that recognizing that this divine essence, this divine intelligence actually wants this for me. And so what I find and what I found in my years of ministry is that people prayed with one foot on the brake and one foot on the gas. Is that they prayed, but deep down they didn't really believe that it could happen for them, that deep down they didn't really believe that maybe they were worthy or deserving of it. And so it's almost like they prayed by holding, kind of holding their breath a little bit. But when you understand the system that I'm sharing with you, and understand that we have been given the gift of dominion over our imaginations, and our imagination is the starting point for everything, and that when there is a desire placed into our heart that then bubbles up into our imagination, that is divinely inspired then we can begin to cultivate the ability to organize our lives with an assumption that it's done. And that's the difference between a prayer of hope and a prayer of completion. It's done. It's done because I recognize the source of my desire. I recognize the law that says, as I am holding this in mind and allowing it to inform who I am being asked to become, more of my magnificence, and I step into that higher version of myself with the assumption that things are now organizing accordingly, that's when prayer gets answered.
Well, and I think it's interesting. I just got back from Thailand, and so it was just fascinating to go to all of the different Buddhist temples and to learn a little bit about Buddhism, and it was fascinating to see how he really talked about becoming. It wasn't a matter of doing, and yes, he talked about here's some things that you need to do, but it's more of becoming and meditating and becoming and so on and so forth. And if you get into the Christian area, you have the same concept. When Christ says, I am that I am, he didn't say, I do that I do. He says, I am that I am. And, and so when you look at that, I think that they're both setting up that capability of becoming who you really are. And I think that becomes the challenge when we come to this earth, and here we are in this life, and we're so challenged by all the things that can occur with a physical body and all that type of thing. And yet, if we really look at it and realize that, you know what, I can change those beliefs. I can change that perception of life. I can change my life. It's fascinating how I had a discussion with one of my brothers who was deeply, deeply religious. And I was making, my personality is kind of, I'll make some smart aleck comments once in a while, right? So I made a smart aleck comment that if I made to one of my other brothers, we'd just laugh and go on. And oh my goodness, I offended him so deeply. And I thought to myself, what on earth is going on? And I realized that for him, his perception was such that was so offensive. And yet, in my mind, it was just a joke, you know? And so it's interesting how people, based on their perception, when an event occurs, they interpret that based on their belief system. And therefore, this is their life. And recognizing that if they can work with their brain, and with that, and change and understand that they can actually change that perception to the point that the next time this event happens, which really, really was difficult for them, they look at it and they laugh and they move on.
Well, and yes, and so this is why the power of having a dream for yourself, the power of having a vision, is that it then begins to inform who is this dream asking you to discover about yourself, and then you start seeing it through the lens of that. And so the person who's living this life, how does that person react and respond in this interaction? And one of the skills, it's across religions, right, across spiritual paths. One of the skills that I continue to work with and I help my clients with is to notice what we're noticing. Right. And the moment we can hone our ability to notice what we notice and ask, is this in alignment with who I'm becoming and what I'm creating? Is this expansive? Am I expansive in the presence of this? And is this empowering me to live the life that is seeking to express through me? And if the answer is yes, then continue it. Or if you find yourself, as you're talking about with your brother, you find yourself contracting. When you have a desired image, whether it's to have a richer relationship, a deeper connection, entrepreneurs building out a business, more dynamic health, when you have the image to inform how you want to show up, and you notice yourself, I'm contracting, I got irritated, I got, whatever in that interaction, to then step back and ask, so the person living this life, how does that person interact here? How does that person show up? And the more you're able to put that on, the more you are then that identity, and the more you continue to show up that way, and it becomes habitual, and that becomes your belief, and it becomes your identity. Now your world can organize accordingly. And here's the other thing. You can recognize this life because you see you living in it and you're able to embrace it. You're able to accept it. You're able to allow it.
Well, and I think that concept can be a little bit difficult for some people. I mean, you talk about the quantum arena, and science has now shown without any question that there exists that quantum field. And as you say, is you can tap into that and create in your mind that life as though you're already living it. That can be a little bit difficult to really understand. How do you explain to your clients how they can literally experience that situation where, okay, this is my dream, this is who I am, and this is who I really am, and yet all of a sudden they recognize, well, no, here's who I really am. and how do they make that change to the point where and you talk about belief system, it really does come into that belief system of, I literally am different because I've tapped into that quantum field and I have been able to bring back to myself a new life. And then once you're there, then how do you actually experience that to become a reality?
Yeah, and that's the process, right?
Okay, so let's get into the process.
That's a great question. So first of all, it's, acknowledging the discontent, right? For so many people, we've been trained, I know I was trained to gloss over and dismiss and deny that there's an edge of discontent, right? And this is when you make it about what's out here, and there's really not anything I can do about it. I should just learn to be grateful and settle and just go on about my life. A key piece of this is really starting to begin to honor when you feel the edge of discontent and understand that it's a divine discontent. It's something bigger, whatever you want to call it, is asking you to know something bigger for you. Now, some people come in with a much greater understanding of that there really is this quantum field, and some people are just coming in from, just a very logical basis. And so when you think about it logically, to realize that number one, we've been given an imagination. This is a gift that we have the ability to create images. And to start noticing the places in your life where you had a dream, you had a desire. Like, I was going to college. I didn't have necessarily family support to do that. I didn't have the funding to do that. But in my mind, there was nothing that was going to stop me from going to college. I had that in my imagination and I was going to do it. And we've all had experiences like that. And I did. I graduated from college, I got my master's degree, and I went further on. Every single one of us has examples of doing that. That's a process of seeing something in your imagination, making a decision for it, and then organizing your life around it. You don't have to know about the quantum field to realize that you can do that. Then to recognize that as you're doing it, notice how you're growing and how you're feeling about yourself and what you're discovering about yourself. Again, you don't have to know about the quantum field. Just from that logical perspective, everybody can relate to that. Everybody has examples of that. So when people begin to see, wow, I've already been doing it, but now I want to pour rocket fuel on it. I wanted to do it even more, and I want to do it more easily. The thing that I have people do is, number one, really immerse themselves in understanding law, then begin to give themselves permission to work with the most powerful question that we can work with, which is, what would I love? What would I love? What would I love to do, have, give, be? Understanding that they're tapping into a force of creative, generative, expansive, loving energy. And a key piece of the work that I do with people is really understanding where that desire is coming from and deepening their relationship with this life force energy. And so it's a process. Then when they give themselves permission to really hear, what is it that brings them most alive? And to begin to build a sense of worthiness, a sense of deserving, a sense of connection with this life force energy, and begin to start playing in the realm of their imagination. Wow, maybe I really can do this. And again, it's repetition, it's practice, it's support, it's study. to start then recognizing, who is my dream asking me to become? What are the qualities that I need to discover about myself, that I need to grow, that I need to enhance? And what is it that I need to let go of? One of the things that I had to let go of was nobility and poverty. And this is what I hear from so many people that I work with, is that they come with an understanding that there's a nobility of struggle, that struggle is holy, struggle is a good thing, that their God wants them to struggle to prove themselves. And so the work then to stare that down and start entertaining, yeah, but what if it could be different? And then doing a process of what I call stacking the evidence. You have built such a case for why this is it, which is why you have a belief around it. What if you began to shift your focus, shift your attention, just do an experiment to start building a case for the reality that life can be easy, that there is a power at work on your behalf, that you are meant to be fulfilled and abundant and joyous, whatever that looks like for you. I have a client whose dream was to build an ADU. It's like a separate, it's a tiny house on her property. And she wants to live in that ADU and provide housing for people who are struggling. That's her dream. She comes alive in the presence of that, and the thing's almost done. I mean, she did it. And so it really doesn't matter what the dream is. It's asking yourself, who is my dream asking me to become? And owning that we are meant to live more abundantly, more fulfilled, more joyously. And yes, there's a component of money, that if you want a greater degree of wealth, that you can have that in your life. And so it's an ongoing putting it on. It's an immersion. It's a catching yourself when you find yourself slipping back into an old way of being. I call it zip yourself into the skin of the person who achieved this. And it's moment by moment, stacking evidence by evidence, identification by identification, knowing that there's going to be that gravitational pull back to the familiar, which is why I create the support that I do, to help people stay center stream to the dream that's coming through them, until it can feel magical, but it's not. It's a system that all of a sudden you turn around and you realize you're different. You're different. And your life is different.
Let me ask you a question. So we're going through that process, and I have my vision board on my computer. So it's there. I look at it every day. Okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that anything's going to change.
No.
But here's the challenge that I see so many times, even with myself and others, that, okay, here's my vision. Here's what I want to be. Here's how I want my life to be. And yet you have those belief systems that have been so deeply, deeply imprinted on us, whether it's been by society, family, friends, religion, whatever that happens to be. How do you help people to literally start to eliminate those limiting beliefs that can be so debilitating to our lives? And the reason I ask that is, I'll be curious how you do it. I mean, I know that there's meditation that people can do. There's NLP, there's hypnosis, there's all of these types of things that people talk about. What is your experience on helping people to eliminate those limiting beliefs to where they've gone away and you truly are experiencing a different life because they're no longer creating that perception of life?
It's a great question. I don't seek to eliminate, I seek to replace. Think about the old cassettes, right? That we didn't have to erase everything off the cassette before we could just record over it. And so the thing that I help people do, first of all, is really let themselves, first of all, hear the dream. That's, with my work, that's foundational to everything because it informs everything, right? And so, and within that container, you're immersing yourself in the study of law, that you're immersing yourself in an understanding that you really do have this power and that there is a power at work for you. And so it's ongoing repetition. There's a rigor to this, Dr. Doug, that very few people are really willing to entertain. So and my clients are doing that, and they're making amazing progress. So let me give an example. So I had still have a client who had a brick and mortar. Every Sunday she'd get up with a knot in her stomach because that was the day that she was going to do her books, and she was playing the shell game with money while she was working 60, 70, sometimes 80 hours a week. She was really beginning to think seriously about giving this up, but this thing was her dream. She had a belief deep down that it just wasn't going to happen for her. It didn't get to happen for her, and that life was meant to be hard. So the first thing we started with was that if you can make it up any way you want to, which you're making it up all the time anyway, just start playing with a different possibility. Even if you don't believe it, and here's the thing, you're not going to believe it right away. We're not going to have an immediate belief. You look at that vision board, there are things on that vision board that there's a part of you that says, yeah, I can do that. And then there's another part that says, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that. That's the spiritual journey, is to build a believing in those seemingly impossible things. So the first thing you do is that you begin to write out, and I'm helping people write out the vision to check in. Do you really love that? Or are you thinking that's the best you can do? Are you settling? Are you trying to talk yourself out of it? It takes courage and vulnerability just to hear what is it that you really want. And so we work with really refining and calibrating a vision that when you work with it and when you read it, and there's a whole process that I walk people through to work with that, where it's not just a vision board on your computer, but you're actually working with it, your system comes alive in the presence of it. Then we work with the person who is living this life. What does that person know? And those are the changed beliefs, right? That person knows that I'm worthy. And so you're doing the work. You're doing the, you're doing the mirror work. You're doing the affirmations. You're noticing what worthiness feels like in your body. That person knows I'm courageous. It's like, okay, what does courageous look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? And again, I walk people through it. There's a daily practice where every day you're making a decision to show up as the person who's living that dream. And it's a moment by moment decision of noticing, oh, okay, I've slipped into undeserving. That's what it feels like. That's what it sounds like. That's how I show up when I don't believe I deserve it. And then it's like, okay, let me shift back. And it's that over and over and over. And, they give me the greatest gift of having access to their thinking, so I can help them see when they've slipped back into that old pattern. It's like, okay, what do you know instead? And if you can't know it in this moment, hook into my belief. Believe in my belief in you, that this is the reality for you. And it's really quite breathtaking that let me back up. So they're continuously, rigorously putting it on. Who am I being? Like right now, who have you been during this conversation? I have caused myself to come back and be the woman who has created the kind of life and the kind of result that I want to create in my next iteration. That woman shows up differently. There's a different way of moving and interacting, and it's so subtle, but it's the subtle shifts that make the difference. So from that state of awareness, now you start praying for divine inspiration around what's the action I'm to take that's in alignment with who I'm becoming and what I'm creating. And not only are you taking the action, but you're taking it from the identity, from the assumption that this is happening. Then the results start happening and you're stacking the evidence. You're noticing, oh my gosh, things are changing. There's a part that people want to collapse and push it away. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I deserve it. And so there's a whole process of really learning how to open up and embrace that much good, where you're literally learning how to accommodate in your system a greater degree of freedom, a greater degree of flow. I wish I had a magic pill. I wish I had a magic wand to say, boom, it's done. But it's a rigorous, ongoing daily discipline of over and over and over, which is why you have to have something that you are on fire with, because we're not going to do this for something that we're lukewarm about. But when you are in love with something, you become willing to immerse yourself in the process, whether it's me or somebody else, it doesn't matter. Earlier you said that it's a one size doesn't fit all. It doesn't, but yet the laws do. There's a set of laws, just like there's a set of laws with electricity, that it won't work our way. it works the way it works. And so when there's a daily immersion in study, a daily immersion in applying this, putting on, owning even more what you want to know about something, it's really quite breathtaking how things just begin to change. You're changing the way you're doing things, and your world reflects accordingly.
Well, and let's talk about serendipity. I mean, in new opportunities and so forth, because
Yeah.
really what we're doing is we are creating new opportunities for ourselves. And I appreciate the fact that then we do tap into that higher energy, whoever you want to call that, to help us to do that. And I think that that's important. But how many times have you found that your clients are working on this whole project and all of a sudden they'll call on you and they go, wow,
Yeah.
this just came into my life and I had no idea. It came from someplace that they never expected it. So talk a little bit about serendipitous events that we would never expect, but as we're doing this whole effort, that it actually happens.
Yeah, that's so great, right? It's, people say, "Oh my God, it came to me out of the blue." Well, where's the blue, right? We live and move and have being in this energy of, quote, the blue. And when something, quote, looks serendipitous, it's because we have made ourselves available to us. That this energy, this power now has access to us, and everything coexists simultaneously, that nothing need be added. That there's a guy by the name of Neville Goddard who wrote back in the 1950s, metaphysician, who said, creation is finished. Think of it this way. So this is answering your question. Just, I promise I'm answering this question, but think of it this way. 500 years ago, I'm in Tucson. If I wanted to get from Tucson to LA, we moved from Southern California, I would have had to walk, right? Or maybe have a horse. Think of it this way. Every single step along the way, we had the capacity to get on an airplane. We didn't invent flight. We discovered the laws of aerodynamics that have been here since the genesis of creation. The reason, and we learned how to use those laws to make it easier. In fact, I'm flying to San Diego from Tucson on Thursday to make it easier to travel. We've collapsed time because we've discovered how to use the laws that have been there all along. Everything required to fulfill your desire is already here. Nothing need be added. We have to come into alignment with it. And when things start coming into us out of the blue, it's because we have reached the point of alignment with that desire, that now we're available for it, that we're literally a match for it. And things can drop in. We can recognize when things drop in, because things are dropping in all the time. We're just not in a place to recognize it. We can recognize when that drops in and we can receive it. And my invitation for my folks when I work with them is that when that happens, never be surprised, but always be in awe. You be in grateful and in awe that there truly is a power that you're connecting with in a whole new way.
Well, and I know that you have a step-by-step approach, and we wouldn't have time to go into all of that. But you mentioned the first thing is just being aware.
Yes.
Looking at your life and going, am I happy? Yeah. Am I happy? Do I love my life the way it is? And for many people, that's a difficult thing to just all of a sudden realize, you know what? I'm not happy. And oftentimes they all go, well, yes, because of this, it's because of this. They're all looking at the external factors of what's causing the unhappiness rather than recognizing that it's internal. They can choose to change that unhappiness to happiness.
That's it. It's patterns, right? It's patterns of how we have related with the world. One of the most courageous things that we can do is pull back the veneer, strip the Band-Aid off, and really see our life for what it is. And my experience is that so many people are afraid to do that because they're not convinced that there's something better. And so it's easier just to keep stuffing it down. When you understand that there truly is a methodology for you to lean in and stare it down and transform, then to have the courage to say, my life is good. And here's the thing. My sense is that many people, those of you watching and listening, your life is good. It's probably really good. And if you're paying attention, there's an edge of discontent where life is asking you to embrace and step into something even more magnificent. And so to not stop it good enough being good enough, but to understand that we're living, evolving, ever-growing beings, and that the way this life force energy invites us to grow into more of who we are is by putting the desire on our heart. And so,
well, it's amazing, I think, that people don't really understand. I've looked at some of the science of this, which fascinates me, how the brain can literally change and we can experience different things because we've changed the brain and even the neurological aspects of that brain to where all of those limiting beliefs have kind of, as you say, have been erased because we've written over them a new pathway within our neurological system of our brain. So let me ask you this. You talk about methodology, and we don't have a lot of time left, and I don't know if you're comfortable with this, but as you talk about what you do, you've talked about the first step. Is there a methodology of what you do that you could share with the audience that says, all right, we do this, then we move here, then we move here, then we move here? Not that that's going to help them, but I'd love for you to share what your methodology is so that as people hear this, they can go, okay, this really rings true for me. I need to really talk to Felicia about this.
Yeah, so I've described it some. So let me give you like the acronym. So the first step is design, right? To harness the power of our imagination and our creative capacity by literally designing a dream. What would you love? That's your vision. Then you begin to the R, it's dream. The R stands for relate. You begin to build a relationship with the dream. You have a perfect relationship with your current life. Now you want to build a relationship with the dream life to begin to normalize it and to build a relationship with the person who's living that dream. You let that person inform who you're becoming, and you build a relatedness. That's your identity. Step 3 is express increase. That's the E. Understanding that everything we're doing is to bring a greater contribution to the world around us, regardless of what the dream is. And again, understanding that who we become in the process is truly the gift. It's the difference making. Number 4 is we activate our brilliance. As we're doing this, we're doing what's called generating the state of being, where literally we're lighting up different areas of our brain. We think differently, we become more creative, and we hook to a stream of intelligence that's always guiding us. And so now you're able to see opportunities and hear ideas, just like with flight, that have always been there, but they didn't have access to you. And as you're seeing yourself living this, now you have access to those ideas. You can act on those ideas in a way that assumes success. And then number 5 is to mastermind with a partner in believing, a community, a mentor, whatever, because we're not meant to do this alone. We're not meant to do this in a silo. And it's a rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Like I said, it spells out dream, and you put all that together and boom, amazing things are happening.
There you go. And I think it's really important for people to understand that within that quantum area that we're really talking about, because it's outside this normal experience that we have, that there's a power of creativity there that we can tap into that just makes such a difference in our lives if we're willing to tap into it. And it's not easy. I mean, I'm sure that your clients experience this. This is not easy, but I love the fact that you talk about the fact that you really do need a community. You need that partner. You need somebody to help guide you, or at least to be there to help each other, guide each other, and support each other in that type of thing. So let me ask you this question. A lot of information. Obviously, you've got a great website, and I love your website. Life is meant to be good, and we're all meant to live rich, abundant life, and I love that. Have you got a book? Are there videos? Or is it mainly on your website? How do they really learn more about this so that it feels good enough to be able to reach out to you?
Oh, thank you. So I put together since vision. So let me real quick, the client I was talking about, she began to do this. She went from struggling mid six figures to multiple seven figures. She owned 3 businesses, working 20 hours a week. And the most important thing is just the depth and the breadth of who she's become in the process. So that it works. That example after example. So what I have is that since vision is foundational to everything, I put together a spiritual success toolkit that includes very specific instructions on how to write your vision. There's a meditation in there. And then I laid out, this is what I offer my clients. I laid out the daily practice so you know what to do with that vision in alignment with the formula that I laid out. And then if you want to have a further conversation, there's a way to grab a spot with me as you go through that system. But they can get that at FeliciaSearcy.com/spiritual success.
Spell that, Felicia.
Sure. FeliciaSearcy, my first and last name, .com/spiritual, SPIRITUAL system, SYSTEM, spiritual system.
Okay. And you talk about meditation. How often do you have your people doing the meditation?
When people enroll in my program, I've got a set of meditations that goes with the daily practice that brings them into alignment with their dream. And so it's every day. I spend an hour every day in meditation.
And what's fascinating about that is there's now documentation, scientific documentation that I just observed a few weeks ago, that meditation literally can change so many things, including health and all of those type of things. And it's now been documented scientifically by folks down at University of San Diego, University of California, San Diego, where they're literally seeing a change in the body systems, and the bloods, all of that type of thing, as well as in the mind, to where we're experiencing that different life. And people look at that and go, well, no. But now that they have the scientific evidence that that's actually happening, I think that really helps for those that tend to be a little bit more analytical to go, maybe this will work for me.
Yeah. I love that the science is catching up. There's a great joke where it says that the scientists finally reached the mound of enlightenment, and all the spiritual masters looked at them and said, "What took you guys so long?"
Well, and it's interesting. I won't mention names, but as I've been studying with one particular individual and seeing some of this, talks about the fact that initially when these folks down at the university were approached, it's like, yeah, right, right. All of a sudden, a couple of years later, as they're seeing the results, now about 4 or 5 of them have created this small space, a closet, and they all meditate. Now, think about that. Here's the scientists that didn't believe it, and now they're all meditating because they're seeing the scientific proof that this actually can occur through not only meditation, but I love what you're talking about as far as how having you as an individual to help coach them and be there really helps, because as you say, it takes courage, it takes determination, and sometimes we lose that. But to be able to have someone to help us really, I think, becomes very effective.
Yes. Thank you. And I always have coaches in my life and people who have access to my thinking. And it's an honor to be able to do that with others and helping them, help you create the life that you are meant to live, a life that you love.
Well, and I think that's the key is if you're living the process yourself, you're so much more capable of helping other people do that. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Guess what? This went by really fast. It's been 47 minutes, and it's like, holy cow, we could go on for another couple of hours. So anyway, at this point in time, we're going to have to close. But Felicia, I really appreciate what you've been talking about. And obviously, I changed my show a few years ago from business tips and trends, where I was involved in that, to inspire vision, making a difference in people's lives. And obviously you are one of those people at a very high level that is doing that. So let me honor you for that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you. And Mutual Love Fest. It's an amazing thing that you're doing in terms of bringing amazing speakers and information, and you do it with such grace, Dr. Duggs. There's no hidden agenda, at least not that I'm picking up. So
Thank you.
I just really appreciate that.
Yeah, there is no hidden agenda.
Yeah.
There's no point to it. But thank you so much. And folks, thanks for listening. I know you enjoyed this. And if you want more information on this, please contact Felicia. Go to her website and get some more information and see if this is something that can work for you. I know that it can. It's just a matter of whether you can identify with that and have the willingness and, as you say, Felicia, the courage to make changes in your life. Thanks for joining us, and we hope that you'll join us next time. Have a great week.